Hey everybody, so I want to tell you about an unforgettable day, an incredible day, an amazing day. And it was the day that I was granted new status by Verizon as a user with unlimited data. Look, I wasn't even asking for it. I was just calling to talk about a bill. And the guy was like, wait, you're paying this much for 4 gigs? Oh, no, we can do better than that. Here you go. You can pay less and you'll have unlimited data. That was an unforgettable day. Look, and some of you, you've only ever known what it's like to have unlimited data, so you're like, you don't see what a big deal it is, but if you've ever only had to live off of 2 gigs or 4 gigs or some kind of limitation on your data, you know the struggle is real, man. You're always looking around for Wi-Fi. Where's the Wi-Fi? Can I get the Wi-Fi password? Where's the Wi-Fi? The struggle is real. But when I was granted new status as a user with unlimited data, that was an incredible day. And here we are in Romans chapter 5, and what Paul is basically saying to the people in Rome is this: enjoy your new status with God. Enjoy your new status with God. And to kind of make sense of how we can enjoy our new status with God, well, first of all, you'll read Romans 5 and see what Paul says about that. But we need to think about our old status with God so we can appreciate our new status with God. And look, our old status with God, let's go back to Romans 1. Let's go back to the story that Paul is telling, that what God intended and created for us was destroyed when we ignored him and when we made good things God things. The equity and justice of God that we were meant to reflect and that we were meant to engage was destroyed. Jesus himself said this in Luke chapter 11. He said it in verse 23, "Whoever is not with me is against me. And whoever does not gather with me scatters." And so if I've contributed to the chaos by at some point ignoring God, or at some point making a desirable thing my ultimate desirable, or by making a good thing a God thing, I have this status before God of being unrighteous. It just is what it is. And in some ways, I'm against God. And biblical writers, they actually used an incredibly confrontational term and said, your status is actually the status of an enemy to God, living against God's desires and God's wills and what God intended and created. And that sounds really intense, but we've got to wrestle with the reality of that. What Paul is saying here in Romans chapter 5 is that we can enjoy a new status with God. I don't think any of us wants to be considered an enemy to God or living like we're living against God. But in Romans chapter 5, Paul says we can enjoy a new status with God. And here is the truth. The moment that I become convinced in my heart that Jesus Christ is Lord, the moment that my heart and mind are awakened to this real knowledge that Jesus was who he said he was, that Jesus was who history proved him to be after his very public crucifixion, his very public burial, 3 days dead in a tomb, and his very public resurrection from the dead, conquering death. When I become convinced that Jesus Christ was God, that he was Lord, that he lived the perfectly equitable and just life that I was meant to live but cannot live, when I become convinced of that moment that my heart knows it and that I can confess with my mouth that Jesus Christ is Lord, I am granted new status with God. It is by that faith that I am justified with God. I am granted new status, no longer living as an enemy to God or living against God or the status of an unrighteous person, but I am granted the status of righteousness. And not because I am perfectly equitable and just, but because Jesus was, and I have put my faith in Jesus. I am considered righteous by God. I'm granted new status. And here in Romans chapter 5, Paul is saying to his followers, enjoy your new status with God. He says this, Romans 5, chapter 1, "Therefore, since we have been justified through faith," and this is so cheesy, but think about it like this. We have been justified through faith. It becomes just if I'd never turn my back on God. It becomes just if I'd never contributed to the chaos of life apart from God. It becomes just if justified, never made a good thing God thing. We become justified through faith. And Paul says, enjoy your new status with God. Okay, well, it's time to read Romans 5 and discuss it. Let it take root in our hearts. Let it lead us in worship of who Jesus is and what he's done for us. I love you guys, and I'll see you soon.